could it be? But me, your man, Louie T, here on behalf of Bleacher Report, coming at you with a Washington Commanders weekly update. So before we can talk about this upcoming week, Washington has a couple of practices before they head to South Beach for a joint practice with the Miami Dolphins, which will then be followed a couple days later by the preseason game number 2 versus those same Miami Dolphins. Let's take a step back and look at the week that was last week for the Commanders. Their first action against another colored jersey took on the New York Jets in the preseason game on Saturday afternoon. Before that, took on the Jets in a very sloppy, messy joint practice, weather-wise. You could argue execution-wise. There were a lot of things that they needed to clean up. But ultimately, it was good work for the Commanders. Did suffer some injuries that we found out about. Head coach Dan Quinn had his press conference prior to practice today and mentioned a few nicks and bruises that came out of the game, some guys that did not dress. The Commanders had 11 players who did not dress for the preseason game, including a guy that right now is penciled in as their starting left tackle, Brandon Coleman, their starting right tackle, Andrew Wiley, among others, second-round pick defensive tackle, Johnny Newton, edge rusher Dante Fowler Jr. were among the guys that did not dress. Obviously, Bobby Wagner, future Hall of Famer, middle linebacker, were among the names of guys that did not dress in this game, guys that suffered some injuries in this particular game. Jordan McGee, fifth-round pick, rookie middle linebacker out of Temple, suffered a knee injury. It's not a serious injury necessarily, but it is going to keep him out probably for the remainder of the preseason. It sounds like he didn't get into specifics, but it didn't sound as minor as some of the other injuries that he has described over the life of this training camp thus far. So it sounds like it's going to be something that may derail his rookie season to a degree, right? Like he was really on a great track with Jordan McGee. He was playing really well. They were excited about what they had been seeing from him. And it's going to give some other guys opportunities. That's what it feels like. Sam Hartman, who was battling for a potential roster spot on the back end as one of the QBs here, injured his right shoulder, which is why he left the game. A lot of us were wondering, why did he come out of the game? Why are they putting, Jeff Driscoll back in the game this late? Now we have an answer. Sam Hartman injured his right shoulder, had to be removed from the game, and he's going to be day-to-day, but they'll see if he can practice at all in these first 2 days of the week, Monday or Tuesday. If not, then he won't play in the game on Saturday. Same can be said for Brandon Coleman and some of the other guys that they're trying to bring back. Johnny Newton is among those names as well. If they can't practice early in the week, they won't play in the game on Saturday. So looking at last week, I thought there were some positives, to take away from last week. The defensive line in the joint practice, just getting to work is always good. There were some things that didn't go well. We've talked about a lot of those things. Emmanuel Forbes, just the secondary in general has not been all that great, especially the corners. You still have questions about them, but all in all, it's a process, and you want to continue to see that process play itself out. I think last week we saw the offensive line depth be tested, and clearly one of the things you have to keep in mind when you look at this team and the part of the process that they're in, and I've talked about this on my channel numerous times, is that we're at the infant stages of this recalibration, as they like to call it, as they search and find their north, right? When you're in the infant stages, when you've got the highest turnover rate of any team in the NFL from a roster standpoint, you're going to lack depth. The frontline starters may not be all that bad, and you may be middle of the pack somewhere in that neighborhood from a starter perspective. You feel good about the guys that you can put on the field when it's 11 on 11. But what happens when some of those guys go down is where you really start to see the depth be tested, and especially on the offensive line, it's very apparent that the depth on this roster just isn't there at this current juncture. So I think that was something that kind of shined through last week. They're playing musical chairs with the offensive line. And so That's something to keep in mind right now as they try to get healthy up front. As we get to this week and we head into a new week as they embark upon preseason week number 2, they're going to practice for the next 2 days. Today was a light practice. It started at 1:45, so practice should be over by now. Head coach Dan Quinn said that it's going to be a shorter practice today. Going to be really more so getting the guys ramped back up. So they're going to take it easy today, but there was practice today. Then they're going to practice tomorrow. Tomorrow's practice will be a bit more aggressive. They'll, turn it up a bit more. He talked about Tell the Truth Mondays, which they wanted to talk about what they saw on the film and, really have serious conversations about what needs to be done, what needs to be improved upon, what things did you do well, what things didn't you do well, and what things can you get better at. And so all of those things were encompassed in Tell the Truth Monday. So they did that as well. Tomorrow, they're going to have a much more serious practice to gear them up for the joint practice on Thursday. So the schedule is going to be very similar to that of last week's schedule. If you recall, Monday, Tuesday practice, off on Wednesday, head to South Beach. Last week, they headed to New Jersey on Wednesday, and we're off on Wednesday and had the joint practice Thursday, off Friday, game on Saturday. Look for a very similar schedule this week. Monday, Tuesday practice, off Wednesday, travel to South Beach, get there, joint practice with the Dolphins on Thursday, off Friday, game on Saturday night. So I think things that you should be looking for this week in particular, especially with this particular joint practice. I felt like last week was a really good litmus test for the defense, but more importantly, the offense, because the Jets defensively are very good. And at times the offense struggled. The weather, again, was not very cooperative, so it was hard to really gauge everything that you were looking for offensively. But still, you knew you were going to get a pretty good test from that Jets defense, as it's one of the best in the NFL. And I thought they really pushed that Commanders offense last week, kind of gave them some different looks, some things that they needed to clean up on. And so that was good work. You need that kind of work when you're a young team trying to find your way. I think the opposite side of the field is going to be more in focus this week because the Dolphins offensively are the most explosive team in football. They have the most team speed offensively in the NFL. They're the most dynamic offense. They had the most explosive plays last year, and that's probably going to repeat itself this year. They've added even more speed to their offense. If you didn't think that was possible, well, they did add more speed to what was already a dynamic and explosive track and field-esque offense. So you expect this defense to be tested this week by that Dolphins offense, Tyreek Hill and Waddle and all of those guys, all of the speed they have in the backfield. So that's going to be a great test for this defense that I feel is going to be the catalyst for this football team. So you'd hope that this is a defense that will get the reps that it needs, be able to go out there and take care of business, do the things that you need to see from this defense and expect them to have plays where they get cooked, right? Like last week, it was pretty bad for Emmanuel Forbes going up against Garrett Wilson of the Jets, and there was no Aaron Rodgers, right? So that made it a little bit worse. But expect Tyreek Hill and Waddle and company to get loose more than a few times in that joint practice and really put this defense on their heels and give them the type of test that they need, because they won't see a more dynamic offense this season. During the regular season, there won't be a team that will challenge them vertically, that will be able to put the type of speed the Dolphins will put on the field in that joint practice, because we will not see the Dolphins, more likely than not, play their starters in the preseason game, similar to the Jets, who did not play any of their starters in the Saturday preseason game in week 1. I don't expect nor anticipate the Dolphins to put their starters on the field in preseason game number 2. So the work that you get on Thursday is going to be vital, because you'll be seeing the best that the Dolphins have to offer on Thursday during that joint practice. You will not see that again in the game on Saturday, more likely than not. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe preseason game 2, they decide to throw their guys out there because they probably won't do it for preseason game number 3. Maybe they'll change up their format this week, but the likelihood is they know what they have in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle and Tua Tagovailoa and all of those guys, Devin A. Chan, and the list goes on and on and on. Raheem Mostert. They're not going to probably put those guys out there during the preseason game. So the joint practices, again, will be a really good test for Washington on both sides of the football. The Dolphins activated one of their edge rushers today coming off of an ACL injury, so he's now allowed to practice. So that's a good sign. You're hoping that he's able to maybe get some work in and push these tackles for the Commanders, whomever's out there, giving them some good work. So it's going to be one of those weeks where you anticipate the Commanders getting some necessary work. Expect there to be some moments where they look pretty bad. Last week, it was amazing how many fans I felt overreacted to some of the poor play at specific positions and position groups. That's to be expected. This is a team that's trying to figure some things out. You're dealing with a few injuries too, so that doesn't help matters at all. But at the end of the day, this is a team trying to, find out who's who, what's what, who can we put where. Like there's a process that they're going through right now. And to me, in order to figure those things out, you have to put guys in situations. We've heard the staff and even some of the players kind of regurgitate some of the things that the staff has told them. One of those things that has stood out to me is they have to learn to be comfortable in uncomfortable situations. And with that being said, they're moving guys around. We're seeing guys that haven't played tackle at the NFL level, only guard and center. And we're seeing these guys at tackle, right? We're seeing guys that we're accustomed to seeing just at center play guard, right? So they're moving pieces all around to figure out what guys can and can't do. It's stressing, some of the different positions. Like, for instance, Jaden Daniels was out there with 2 tackles that you don't want anywhere near the field if at all possible. But yet the offense still had to go out and perform in that preseason game, and Daniels and the offense did exactly that. And the thing that I felt really good about coming out of that first preseason game, granted, the Jets did not play any of their starters, and you have to keep that in mind. There was no Quentin Williams. There was no Quincy Williams. There was no C.J. Mosley. There was no Sauce Gardner. There was no D.J. Reed. I'm fully aware of all of that. However, what I was encouraged by was, look, whomever they put out there, take care of business. All right? You can't control who the Jets decide to play and not play. What you can control is what you do to the competition that is out there in front of you. And what I really wanted to see from the interior offensive line, from guard to guard, from Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, and Sam Cosmi, was for them to dominate up front in the run game, create space and lanes for the running back, create extra yards after contact. I thought John Bates was phenomenal in his blocking. He was the guy that had the key block on the Jaden Daniels 3-yard touchdown run. If you watch that play, he's the guy that had the block that set the edge. There was a safety coming down trying to get to Jaden, and because of the block that John Bates set, he couldn't get around, and Jaden was able to then jaunt into the end zone. So I thought the level of physicality by the interior offensive linemen in particular, but just the offensive line in general, and the tight ends are obviously an extension of the offensive line. I thought it was phenomenal in the game on Saturday. Also, I thought the running backs ran extremely physical. Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, Michael Wiley. I thought those guys in particular really showed well in that preseason game. So you're looking for more of that this upcoming week. As we get to preseason game number 2, you're looking for guys to start to separate themselves. This is the week where you really have to turn it up if you're a fringe roster guy, because things are getting tight. You're getting closer to the end. There's less time left now than there was, last week, right? So now you're getting closer to the end. where cuts have to ultimately be made and they have to trim this roster down to 53. But it's not just about making the 53-man roster. Obviously, that's the goal if you're a player on the 90-man roster. But there's still going to be another 16 spots available on the practice squad. You want your name to be on one of those spots if you can't make this roster. So there's going to be a ton of battles going on with guys trying to separate themselves. And I think the back end of the roster is really interesting because there hasn't been a ton of separation at a few positions, even though I think I have a pretty good handle on what I think is going to ultimately transpire. You never know what's going to happen with injuries. You never know what's going to happen, with guys showing up and showing out. So there's still a ton of opportunity on the offensive line where they're shuffling around pieces and shuffling the deck, right? We don't know who's going to be healthy. We don't know how many they're going to keep. So these guys being able to show versatility, be able to play tackle, guard, and center, be able to play tackle and guard, be able to play guard and center. These are important things that they're finding out right now as they're shuffling the deck with these offensive linemen. Cornerback, we're looking for depth at that position. Can someone step up on special teams and show the ability to play corner and make a statement and end up on this roster? Same with wide receiver. I think they're starting to figure out what they have in the return game. But if they can solidify that, then you figure out who can help you at receiver and try to figure out who that sixth receiver is going to be. Right now, I don't think there's a concrete answer to that question. Kicker, obviously, we have a kicking competition going on. So there's a number of things that you want to find out there. We saw both kickers get opportunities in the preseason game versus the Jets. Riley Patterson had a 39-yard field goal. He missed. You had Ramiz Ahmed get a similar opportunity from 40 yards out. He connected. He made all three of his kicks, the 2 extra points and the field goal. So right now, I'd say advantage Ramiz Ahmed if you're keeping score at home. But again, we'll see what happens. Maybe I've started to do scouting on other kickers around the league, teams that have multiple kickers. The Saints had a kicker named Smith who made a game-winning kick against the Cardinals. That's a pressure situation. You like to see that. He drilled it right down the middle, all the way at the top of the net from about 40 yards out. So again, I'm starting to look at other teams' kickers now. I'm starting to do scouting around the league. I don't know if they're going to go outside of the roster to try to find the answer at kicker. But, after watching preseason game 1, you have to start thinking that has to be something they have to be mulling around and playing with, the idea of maybe we need to scour the streets again, looking to see if we can't upgrade the kicker position once more. So there are a lot of positions left to be decided. And so this is going to be a big week, especially with the joint practice, the final of the 2 joint practices that Washington has with another team. So Dan Quinn said before last week that these next 2 weeks with the joint practices against the Jets and the Dolphins, they were going to figure a lot out over the next 2 weeks. 1 week down, 1 week to go. They're going to figure out a lot about this team this week, and then they're going to start to make some determinations. They're going to start to put guys in slots and see where guys are heading into that 3rd and final preseason game versus the New England Patriots. So this is a big week for the Commanders and a lot of its players, because ultimately, if you're a guy on the fringe of this roster trying to make a roster spot, trying to make a name for yourself around the league, there are 31 other teams that will have an opportunity to see what you are able to do, and you have a chance to showcase your skills. You have a chance to make the practice squad and be that close to being pulled up to the active roster on game day. So a lot is going to be determined this week with the Dolphins. I think that you're going to see more emphasis put defensively on the workload for the Commanders because of who they're going up against. They get to simulate a lot of different things in the joint practice. So I think the defense is going to be tested. I wouldn't be shocked if we heard Emmanuel Forbes was cooked again. I hope it goes a lot better for him and the rest of that secondary this week than it did last week. But all in all, you're going up against the best. Tyreek Hill is the best receiver in the NFL. They just did the NFL top 100 players from last season, and he was number 1 on the list. The guy was almost a 2,000-yard receiver last year. We know what he's capable of. We watched him up close and personal. He cooked us for 2 touchdowns last year in the game when they put up 45 points on our head. So we are fully aware of what he and Waddle and company are capable of. So I expect carnage in that joint practice, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, it's all about getting the reps. It's all about getting better. Iron sharpens iron, and you're not going to find a more dynamic offense in the NFL than the Miami Dolphins. So I think this is a great test, an opportunity for the Commanders to use some of the things that they've been taught, some of those different fundamentals and principles that they've been taught, but also just to see where guys stack up. I mean, how many guys in the league can actually run with Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, right? One-on-one. But you want to see what guys can and can't do, right? So you're going to get an opportunity. I think something else that we really want to see, and Dan Quinn even emphasized this in his press conference on Monday, was, and Joe Witt Jr. talked about this last week before the team headed on a plane for New Jersey, is that they want to see them take the ball away more. That's something that they just haven't done over the last 4 years here in Washington under the last regime. It's something that they haven't really done all summer, and they didn't do it in the first game of the preseason. So I think an emphasis will really be put on the players this week to try to take the football away, whether it be in the joint practice or in the preseason game against the Dolphins. They need to see this team start to take the football away. They talk about ball is life. This is an opportunity now for them to start showing that the football is actually life by taking it away. We just haven't seen that. And that's one of the things I'm hanging my hat on. I expect Joe Witt Jr. and Dan Quinn to come in here and force this defense to start taking the ball away. I know it's all words right now, and we need action behind it. This is a week to start taking actionable steps. But wherever Joe Witt Jr. has gone, turnovers have followed, whether it's Green Bay, Dallas. We're hoping that it follows him here. Jason Simmons is another guy that is really big on getting the football out and taking it away. And they've been working with these corners and safeties very closely. I'm hoping that we start to see these guys attacking the football, looking for the punch out, right? Not just picking it off. You want to see guys pick off passes, and that's great. But how about punching the football out? We need to get some of these footballs on the ground and start forcing some opportunities. We just haven't seen it all offseason, really, long from this Commanders defense. So that's something else I'll be really keying in on this week, is finding a way to create some turnovers. They haven't done that. And that's something that's going to be huge for a young team like the Commanders, who I don't think is going to be as dynamic on offense, despite what they did on Sunday versus the Jets. Again, the Jets B- squad was out there. I have to continue to remind you of that, because you need to temper your expectations. It was fun to see the offense go out and execute the way that they did. And despite that, I still don't expect this offense to be, a juggernaut and to be out there scoring 30 a week. So you're going to need this defense to step up and create shorter fields, be able to take it away, score themselves. Hell, you want something done? Do it yourself, right? Take it away and take it for a touchdown, pick six, scoop and score. Do those things, set up the offense with shorter fields, get off the field and force the offense to, punt the football deep in their own territory and give the offense great field position. Special teams is going to have to do their part, which is why I've been so hard on special teams, because, again, when you're a team like Washington with a roster that's been turned over the way that it has been this offseason, and you're young and you're trying to figure out so many different things, you're going to be in a bunch of close ball games. That's just the way it's going to be. That's just the way of the league in general. Unless you're an elite team and you've got it stuck on automatic, you're going to be in close ball games. That's the nature of the beast in the NFL. Now you add to the fact that you're a young team with lacking continuity, because you literally just turned over 60% of your roster, and you got a rookie quarterback and potentially a rookie left tackle and a bunch of moving parts, all new coaching staff, new offense being implemented, new defense being implemented. Everything's brand new. You expect this team to maybe even start slow this season. We'll see. The hope is that they don't. They come out guns a-blazing is what you hope. But ultimately, you're going to need special teams to be top-notch and do its job. You're going to need the defense to create more opportunities because we just don't know what to expect from this offense. So I think this is a big week defensively for the Commanders to start maybe looking to create some turnovers. Ball is life. Prove it. Start doing it this week. So that's kind of the week for the Commanders. Monday, Tuesday practice. Thursday, they're going to take on the Miami Dolphins in a joint practice. Saturday, the game takes place Saturday night, 7:30, somewhere in that neighborhood. And preseason game 2 on the road at the Dolphins. I expect the Dolphins to do a lot of what we saw from the Jets, which is not play their starters. I watched the Dolphins in their first preseason game versus the Atlanta Falcons. There wasn't a lot of guys out there that moved the needle. So if they opt to go in that direction again, I look for Washington to kind of do a lot of the things that they did in preseason game 1 by taking advantage of, the Dolphins B- squad. Go out there and show dominance, exert your will against a squad that is lesser than. Out there, take the first team offense, score some points, get off the field, defense, do what you did against the Jets, 3 and out, get off the field, and then let the young guys go out there and battle for roster spots, right? So hopefully it looks a lot like it did last week, where the offense takes care of business early, gets off the field, defense takes care of business early, gets off the field, and then we let the young fellas come in and do what they do and fight for roster spots on the back end and put on some tape. Some young guys showed well. Ben Sinnott was one of the guys that stood out. Michael Wiley, another guy, undrafted running back out of Arizona. Sinnott is a second-round pick out of K-State at the tight end position. There are a number of guys who really showed up in this game. Lamide Zaccheaus and De'Ami Brown were 2 of the receivers that kind of solidified their spots. I think they already were solidified in my mind, but for a number of fans who hadn't really seen those guys as locks on this roster, I think they kind of solidified their place on this roster with their performance on Saturday versus the Jets. So you're looking for some guys to maybe do that against the Dolphins, right? Go out and solidify your spot. If you're a Cole Turner, I think he's going to make this team. I think they're going to keep 4, but there's nothing guaranteed right now. Go solidify your roster spot. Go make some plays. Go catch the football. Go be physical in the run game, right? These are things you're looking for. Jahan Dotson was out there quite a bit, really didn't have an impact on Saturday's game and preseason game number 1 versus the Jets. Go out and show what you're capable of. Start to get it going because he's going to be a huge part of this offense, you would think, in 2024, right? So these are the types of things you're looking for, right? Guys to go out, really, show what they're capable of. Others to maybe solidify a roster spot. Some to, make a case for themselves. All of that and then some, I think, is what you look for this week for the Commanders. So I think this is the last big week for the Commanders, if I'm being honest with you, because it's the last week with the joint practice. It's the last week where presumably, I could be wrong about this. Presumably, I think it's the last week you see the starters play any amount of snaps. I don't anticipate the starters playing any meaningful snaps, any snaps at all, really, in the game against the Patriots, the 3rd and final preseason game. There isn't a joint practice set up with the Patriots. So all in all, I think this is going to be the last really big week for a number of guys to make a massive statement. Not that you can't continue to make a statement next week into the preseason game number 3 for some of those fringe guys. But I think large and in part, this is the week that if you're looking to make your case, to put yourself in a position to really make the team, this is the week you really need to do it. So looking forward to seeing what happens with the Commanders moving forward this week. But I'm going to ask you a question, and then we're going to get out of here. Who, for you, was the biggest winner from last week's preseason game versus the Jets? Who's coming into week 2 of the preseason with the most momentum? Leave it down in the comment section. Can't wait to read your responses. Who had the most momentum? Who has built the most momentum going into week 2? I think there are a number of guys that are candidates for this. Um, I think there are some guys that have really, really showed well, and now the expectation and the bar has been raised. That the level that they played at shows us what they're capable of. Now we need to see more, and we expect to see that moving forward, right? So, with that said, I'm going to get out of here. We'll be doing this every week here for the remainder of the summer as we, head on this collision course, right, with the regular season. Preseason 1 in the books. Preseason game number 2 will be on Saturday. Commanders have 3 practices leading up to that game: Monday, Tuesday, joint practice with the Dolphins on Thursday, then the game itself on Saturday evening in South Beach against the Dolphins. Lots to see take place between now and then. So, big week for the Commanders as they continue to try to shape and mold their roster. I'm your man, Louie Tee, signing off. Until next time, you guys have a good one. Take care.